Hey there, tubers. Today's project's going to be putting these two boxes of parts right up in there. So what I've got here is the cruise control kit and the linked pedal kit. The cruise control kit is a 7378640 and the linked pedal is a 7378650. Now out of these two kits, the cruise control is definitely going to be the one that I use the most of. I might use the link pedal now and then, but the cruise control is essential for me. I don't know if anybody else has pedals that are as stiff as the ones on this tractor I've got, but after just a few minutes my knee is killing me. The pedals are at least twice, if not three times as stiff than what my CT2555s are, and I don't know why they're that stiff. It has to be, I guess, just the return spring on it, but it definitely kills my knees, and so this is a must-have for me. And what I've decided to do is to take the canopy off to get it inside here, because this is going to be a fairly intrusive project. You've got to pull the steering wheel, the dash, and the floor, and then you pull your hydrostep pedals apart. So I wanted to do it inside, not outside, and then that way, if for some reason this ends up taking longer than it should, it's indoors so that this dash and everything behind it isn't out in the weather for too long. But the reason I'm doing both together is a lot of the steps that you've got to do for one, you have to do for the other. So if you were to just do the cruise control kit, you've still got to pull the steering wheel, the dash, and the floor, and the same with the link pedal kit. So I've decided I only want to do it once, so I'm just going to do them both together. What I'll end up doing is showing the first part and the last part of the videos the same, and just split them up into two separate videos, just in case somebody only wants to watch one of them versus both. So with that, the instructions say that this cruise control should only take about an hour to install, and the link pedal should take about 2 hours to install. I'm guessing that's somebody with experience and the right tools right off the bat. So we'll see how close I come to that, but I'm going to guess it's probably going to take a little bit longer. There's not a lot of parts in the cruise control, but there is in the link pedal. So we'll get started here. I'll get some tools out and see where this takes us. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull the steering wheel here, and this little plastic piece is just pushed in. So I get a little screwdriver here, and be careful not to chip the chrome on the plastic here. Just kind of work your way under it, and then that should just pop right off. And there you've got a nut and two threaded holes that'll help you pull the steering wheel off. So I'll grab a steering wheel puller and we'll get that set up. Alright, so a 17 millimeter took off the center nut and lock washer for this, and then I've got a steering wheel puller kit, but the holes for this are just a little too close to make any of these work, so I had to kind of go at an angle here. I don't know if you can tell, but I was still able to get on that and pop it loose, and there, the whole thing just came right off. So that worked out. It's not on there too tight. It's still a fairly new tractor, so I didn't think it'd be rusted or golded on there yet, so it came off fairly easy. So the next thing will be to get this dash torn apart here, and I'll see what's all involved in that and get right back. One thing I forgot to mention is that I did take a grease pen. I marked here and I marked the steering wheel so that when I put this back together it goes back in the same spot. Not that it really matters. There's no master on that shaft here, so the steering wheel can go on anywhere. And what I've found is as I use the tractor, the steering wheel rotates anyway, so the steering wheel never stays in the same spot. But I just did it just in case. So as for pulling the dash, I'm gonna have to take the screw out here, pull this handle off for the throttle, and then there are 4 screws. One here, one down in here on the other side, one down here in the bottom, and then one right there in the side. And that's all that holds that dash on. Now the only one that had any length to it is the bottom one. The other 3 are the same length, and then this whole thing just pulls off. Now none of these were very tight. I'm guessing it's just because this is plastic, and if you over tighten it you're probably going to break it. But I could see where these might work their way out over time, because they were just a little bit more than hand tight. But I'll put them back that way, and if I start seeing them work their way out, I'm probably going to end up putting some thread locker on them just in case. So I'll get this handle pulled and we'll see what the dash looks like when it comes off. Okay, well, the dash doesn't want to come off very far because the electrical connection for the hazard lights is kind of holding it up. Let's see if I can get in there to show you. So I think I can get my arm in there and disconnect that connector in there, and then I think there's enough length for the dash that I should be able to get it off at that point. So I'll get in there, see what I can do, and go from there. Well, I got it off. I had to get my arm up underneath through down by the pedals here to get to it, and it wasn't too bad. It's just a couple of tabs on each side and it came right off. I initially tried coming in through the top and there just wasn't any way of doing that, and I ended up putting tape around the steering wheel because this plastic, when I was jiggling it around, was starting to rub on this and I didn't want to lose any paint, so I just put that tape on there before I pulled this off. And there's just enough length on this harness to just get it over the top. So now the dash is apart, so we'll move on to the next step. Alright, so the next step is to pull up the floor. Now with that dash off, it would be in the way because you can only pull it to this side, and they want this floor panel and the center floor panel pulled up. So I just disconnected all the connections for the dash and just put the dash over to the side here. And with that gone, you can kind of see the holes a little better. One here, one there, one there, and one there. And those are what held the dash on. That was a 10mm that took those off. And now to pull this mat, it's very simple, but the pedals are gonna keep me from getting that mat up. So I'm gonna have to come down here, and these 14mm hold these pedals on. I'm gonna have to pull the pedals out so I can get the mat out so I can get to the floor plates. So I'll get rolling on that and be right back. Alright, well, that was ridiculously tough. I ended up breaking 2 box end wrenches trying to break those free. And what I ended up doing was getting a 6-point half-inch drive with an extension to get it out here past the step and get some leverage on it, and I put a lot of torque on that before they broke loose. It was insane. I know that you don't want these coming out if you're using the pedals, but that was ridiculous. I can't see where they put any Loctite on them, so I'm not sure how they got them that tight. I mean, underneath on the tractors, probably a little bit of moisture and dirt, but I can't imagine that being the cause of this. But I will probably put some Loctite on it, some of the maybe green stuff, so it comes loose in the future. But why they were that tight, I'll have no idea. So they just pull right out, these top slots. So now I'll just lift the mat, and then I've got some bolts under here to take off and get that center section and this one off, and then we'll move on from there. But I'll get this pulled apart and let you know what's going on. Okay, so there are 8 bolts that go around the centerpiece, 4 on both sides. 12mm will take those off. This piece will not come out without either taking the draft speed drop linkage out or the brake lock out. Now this one, there's a cotter pin back behind the seat here you could probably get to, but I'm not entirely sure that this needs to come out. The directions are very vague in certain aspects. It just says pull center section and right floor up. Doesn't tell you how, doesn't tell you anything other than that. So I had to kind of experiment here on this piece. If you look underneath, there's a bolt here, and then one here and one back in here, and they all have rubber bushings on them. So I think those are the only ones that matter underneath side here anyway. 17mm takes these off, 14mm takes these 2 off, and then there's one 10mm bolt right here, or a 10mm head. And then I think this whole thing should kind of pop out of there. This is the only one that has access on the top. These other 2, you have to access them through the bottom, so I'm not sure whether I'm going to have to pull those bolts to get this played out or whether I can tip this up enough. But I'll get to working on that and be right back. Alright, so that took a little finagling to get out, but I got it out. Now that is a metal plate, and these are metal fenders, metal all around, so you got to be careful, make sure that you don't scratch things up when you pull this floor out. But I was able to get it out without taking this piece out. You do need to raise it up, so you do need to take all 8 bolts out, but it came out just fine. And I think for the most part this piece can stay. I think everything that I'm going to be dealing with is going to be down in here, so I shouldn't have to take this piece out, but if I do, I'll probably get back in here and just pull that pin and pull that out to get that out, but I'll cross that bridge if I need to. So at this point I'll probably split the videos up, for one for the cruise control and one for the linked pedal. The first part here is going to be the same for both of them, and then putting everything back together is going to be the same. So I'll put a marker here in case you want to watch both, that you can skip ahead so you're not repeating the same drivel each time. So with that, we'll move on. So the next step on the cruise control install will be getting the 2 relays and bolts that they supplied with the pack and mounting them up here. One will go here and one will go here. So that should be pretty easy. Looks like a 10mm, and I'll get those mounted up and then we'll connect the wiring harness. So here's the wiring harness that they supply you with. These two connectors right here will connect to these relays. Then we'll route this up underneath here, up through here. We'll take this connector here and connect it to this one that's existing under the dash. And then we'll route this one across to where it comes out over on this side in here. So that's pretty simple. I'll just get it all connected up and show you what it looks like. There she is installed. Now these are identical relays, so it's not going to matter which one you go to, but there is only one direction that these plugs go in. So you got to just spin it around till you find that one spot, and then they snap right in. Then we snapped this connector together, brought this wire up through here, and then the other wire we brought down through here. And it comes through the dash area out to there, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so the next step will be to take the magnet here and mount it to the bracket. They've supplied you with a couple of bolts, 12 millimeter socket will get those on there. So I'll just mount that up, run the bolts in, and this part will be ready to go, and we'll go to the next step. Alright, so the next step is to come over here on the right hand side, and you'll see two pre-drilled holes in the frame here. So now you take this bracket, put it up underneath, and then run two bolts that are supposed to be in this kit. It only came with one, so I'm going to have to go find another one. It's fairly typical that these Bobcat kits are usually missing something. So it just happens to be a bolt this time, and I'll get at least the one bolt in so you can see where this is supposed to be mounted and how to get the wiring harness connected to it. So I'll get this put up and be right back. Okay, so that's somewhat installed. If I had both bolts, I'd run them both in there, but you need to leave them loose for now, because what you'll do is you'll put the floor back in and the pedals back in, and then you need to adjust this bracket in or out so that when the forward pedal is in here, that there's 1 millimeter space between the pedal and this magnet, and that's what holds your pedal in position. Is when you flip the switch, it turns this magnet on, and it's strong enough to hold the pedal where it's at. So one thing with connecting the wires to it is you got to make sure and route that wire a little different than I had it originally. Come in over the top of these hoses in here, down, and there is gap behind this plastic piece here to come out right underneath. And that's just enough wire. You route it any other way, you won't have enough. But I'll get another bolt for this, and then we'll start putting the floor and everything back together and get this piece measured out to exactly 1 millimeter and go from there. Now on the dash, since I've got it already off the machine, this will be really easy. So we pull this blank cover here and install the switch that will activate the cruise control. And since this is off, it'll be easy to flip this over, and you'll see there's just a couple of clips here. We'll press those in, pop that out, and then the new switch will go right in there. Bada bing, bada boom. So that just popped out. Now we'll take this one, make sure that the markings are in the right position, and we'll just slide it in there. Bam, it's in. Piece of cake. Okay, so the floor panel is in. Again, just be careful because it is metal and it is kind of awkward to get back in, because you've got to get this plus these two bolts that are underneath back in their holes. And one thing to watch out for is this wire that we've run down underneath here. for the cruise control. It comes up and kind of comes right through this area here, so you can pinch it if you're not watching. I just had to reach up underneath here and guide that wire back so it's like right in this area here, and it's free and clear of rubbing on anything now, so that's good. And I'll just stick the 8 bolts up here, and then the 3 nuts underneath, and then the floor should be secure. So I'll get that knocked out, and then we'll attack the pedals. And now the cruise control, final thing will be to get a 1mm feeler gauge, get in between this pedal and this magnet. So 1mm is pretty close, so I'll have to see what I've got in the feeler gauge area and get that in there. And I did find another bolt that would work, so I've got both bolts in there. I'll get this adjusted, tightened down, and then we should be ready to put the dash back together. Well, I got my feeler gauges out and was able to get 1mm on this side, but the way this bracket's set up, or the pedal, one or the other, it's not square to each other. This is tighter on this side than this side. So I went with this side, seeing how it's the closest for the 1mm. I mean, it's not very far off, but there is a difference. And then, of course, this bracket has some wiggle in it because it goes clear back up into there. So you can't expect it to be without some wiggle in it. So I'm hoping between this wiggle and spacing it at the front that it's adequate. I will find out here shortly for sure, but I just thought I'd let you know how this one is turning out. So I'll get up, start putting the dash back together, and see what happens. So I've got the dash back pretty much in place now. One thing that I did figure out is this wire for the cruise control. It wanted you to loop it around and come through the center of the console, so just above the steering shaft here. And when you do that, there's not enough cord to get over here to this hole. So you're basically going around and coming back. So what I did is I popped the switch back out, and then I had to move this wire back around and come on the outside of the dash framework, and that's how much you end up with. Just barely enough to do this. So as for the instructions, if you did it the way they want you, you'll never get it hooked up. And one thing that I've neglected to tell you guys is I am a big fan of dielectric grease. I put it on everything. So anytime I have something apart or I'm putting connections together, I always put a gob of it in there and then put the connections together, and it's just a little added safety, I think, for the potential of corrosion and water intrusion, especially with an open cab tractor like this. So I'll get this switch put together, which is pretty easy. Should just push together there, and then I'll just push it in, and that'll be done. There's the dash all back together. There's just the one screw here. There's one up here, and one on the other side right over there, and then the one down below here. And I just snugged them up. I didn't put much torque on them. It's just plastic, so I didn't want to break it, and they were not very tight when I took it off. So the next thing to do is just put my throttle knob back on, and the screw for it. Just in the back side here. I'll get that screwed in there and then put the steering wheel on, and we should be ready to roll. Alright, so throttle cap's on, steering wheel's back on. The only thing left to put my Bobcat symbol back in. Just pushes right on. I'll peel that off here one of these days. Trying to keep things nice for as long as possible. Looks like crap with it, but at least it's still nice underneath. So yeah, I guess now is time to fire it up and see if everything works. Alright, hopefully you can hear me. So what I'm going to do is get this tractor moving forward, and then I'm going to turn the cruise control switch on and see if it holds it. So let's get going. Switch is on, light on the dash is on, my feet are off the pedals, and we're moving. Perfect. So now, if I hit the brake, it should stop us, which it did. Now, as you saw when I was putting it together, that magnet is only on the forward pedal. There's nothing on the reverse, so your cruise control only works when moving forward. So with that, that's the install of the cruise control. Alright, now that everything's been tested and seems to be functioning, let's get down to how long this took. On the cruise control, the paperwork says it should take about an hour. It probably took me an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes to do it. You know, the biggest factor is going to be pulling the steering wheel, just how hard that is for you if you've got the right tools and it isn't galded onto that shaft. You know, the next thing is getting the dash all apart, and other than that, the cruise control is pretty easy to install. It goes pretty quick. I think now that I've done it, it'd be pushing it for me to get it done in an hour. It probably could be done, but I'd have to have everything lined up and just ready to go. Otherwise, you know, a little over an hour would be absolutely doable. So with that, it's not a bad job, and if you have any questions or comments, leave them below. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye bye.